Have you ever looked at an elderly couple holding hands and wondered what stories lie behind those weathered smiles? Most people see two old faces, but they don't see the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the heartbreaks, the laughter, the countless apologies, or the millions of tiny decisions that kept two lives together. This is the story of Thomas and Eleanor, a story that began in 1946 and lasted for 80 remarkable years. And if you stay until the end, you may discover that the greatest secret to a lasting marriage has very little to do with romance and everything to do with choice. The village hall was alive with music. It was the first community dance held after the war, and the people were eager to forget years of fears and loss, if for one evening. Young men stood nervously by the walls, polishing their shoes with handkerchiefs. Young women adjusted borrowed dresses, hoping no one would notice the stitches where old fabric had been repaired. Thomas was 21 years old, tall, quiet, and painfully shy. He had spent the war years working in a local factory, supporting his widowed mother after his father never returned home. He had no grand fortune, no university education, only rough hands, an honest heart, and a dream of building a peaceful life. Across the room stood Eleanor Brooks. She was 19 with bright eyes that seemed to smile before her lips ever did. She dreamed of becoming a school teacher. Unlike many young women of her time, she wanted a career before she thought about marriage. Her father often teased her, "You all frighten every young man away with those books." She would simply laugh, "I am reading. If reading scares him, he isn't the right man." Thomas noticed her almost immediately, not because she was the prettiest woman in the room, though many would have said she was. He noticed her because while everyone else was trying to impress one another, she was helping an elderly neighbor carry a tray of tea. There was kindness in the way she moved. It wasn't for attention, no, it was simply who she was. Thomas spent nearly an hour gathering enough courage to ask her for a dance. Twice he walked towards her. Twice he turned around as a shy man. Finally, an elderly gentleman sitting nearby smiled and whispered, "Son, if you wait any longer, she'll be dancing with someone else all night." Thomas took a deep breath and a step of faith. He crossed the room. "Miss, would you care to dance?" Eleanor looked at him for a moment before smiling warmly. "I thought you had never asked." As the orchestra played slow waltz, they stepped awkwardly onto the dance floor. Thomas apologized almost immediately after accidentally stepping on her shoe. "I am terribly sorry." Eleanor laughed. "If that's the worst mistake you make tonight, I think we all survive." For the next 3 minutes, neither of them said very much. But somehow, the silence didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt peaceful. When the song ended, Thomas thanked her and assumed that would be the last time they ever spoke. Instead, Eliana surprised him. Are you walking home? Yes, so am I. The walk, the walk took nearly 40 minutes. Neither of them wanted it to end. They talked about books, family, dreams, favorite meals, and what they hoped life might look like in 10 years. When they reached Eleanor's gates, Thomas realized he had forgotten something important. He had asked, he hadn't asked if he could see her again. He stood there searching for the right words. Before he could speak, Eleanor smiled. The library closes at 5 on Thursdays. He looked confused. I volunteered there every Thursday afternoon. She paused. If someone happened to visit around 4:30, I don't think I'd mind. Thomas couldn't stop smiling all the way home. Over the next year, Thursdays became sacred. Sometimes she borrowed books she never intended to read, simply for an excuse to see her. Sometimes they shared sandwiches on a park bench after the library closed. Other times, they walked beside the river, speaking about everything and nothing. Slowly, friendship became affection. Affection became love. One spring evening, Thomas stood beneath an old oak tree, overlooking the river where they had spent so many afternoons together. His hands trembled as he reached into his coat pocket. Inside was a small ring, nothing expensive. It had taken months of careful saving. When Eliana arrived, she immediately noticed how nervous he looked. Thomas, is everything alright? He took a deep breath. I can't promise you a life without hardship. I can't promise that we will always have enough money. I can't promise that we all never face disappointment. He looked into her eyes. But I can promise that whatever life brings, you will never face it alone. He knelt on one knee. Eleanor Brooks, will you marry me? For a long moment, she said nothing. Tears welled in her eyes. Then, gently, she helped him back to his feet. I am sorry. Thomas felt his heart sink. I can't say yes. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. He held both of his hands and whispered, not because I don't love you. I do. But I need to know that if we marry, I also be allowed to become the woman I am trying to be. I don't want to lose myself. Thomas looked at her with complete sincerity. I don't want you to lose yourself either. I want to spend my life beside the woman you become. Those words changed everything. 3 months later, beneath the same old oak tree, Elano gave him her answer. This time, she didn't need many words. She simply smiled through happy tears and whispered, Yes! Neither of them realized it then. But that simple promise to help each other become, rather than to control each other, would become the first secret behind a marriage that would last 80 unforgettable years. The wedding was small. There was no grand chandeliers, no luxury venues, and no elaborate decorations. The village church was filled with family, neighbors, and friends who had watched Thomas and Eleanor grow up. Eleanor's dress had been sewn by her mother using lace from her grandmother's wedding gown. Thomas wore the only suit he owned. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the marriage, the church fell silent. Thomas squeezed Eleanor's hand. She smiled back with the same quiet confidence that had first caught his attention at the village dance. They exchanged simple vows, no dramatic promises, no poetic speeches, just a commitment to love, honor, and remain faithful, for better or worse. Neither of them truly understood what for worse would mean, not yet. They rented a tiny cottage at the edge of the village. The roof leaked whenever it rained. The kitchen was barely large enough for two people to stand in together. The furniture was a collection of second-hand pieces donated by relatives. Yet, on their very first evening there, Eleanor looked around the little house and said, "It's perfect." Thomas laughed. "You must have lower standard than I thought." She smiled. "No, it's perfect because it's ours." Money was always tight. Thomas worked long hours at the factory, often leaving before sunrise and returning after dark. Eleanor began teaching at the local primary school. Every Friday evening, they sat together at the kitchen table with a small notebook. They carefully listed every expense: rent, coal, bread, milk, soap. There was rarely anything left. One week after paying every bill, they discovered they had just enough money for one small luxury: a slice of apple pie from the bakery. Thomas insisted Eleanor should have it. She refused, so they bought one slice and shared it. Years later, whenever anyone asked about their favorite meal together, neither mentioned expensive dinners or holiday feasts. They always remember that single slice of pie, because happiness had never depended on how much they owned. It depended on who sat beside them. A year later, Eleanor discovered she was expecting their first child. Thomas was overjoyed. He immediately began painting a second-hand coat that one of the neighbors had given them. Every evening, he imagined teaching his son to fish, or his daughter to ride a bicycle. He dreamed about birthdays, Christmas mornings, school plays, little footsteps running through the house. But life rarely follows the plans we make. 6 months into pregnancy, Thomas's factory announced major layoff. Machines were replacing workers. On a cold Friday afternoon, he returned home carrying a small cardboard box. Inside were his lunch tin, his gloves, and the framed photograph of Eleanor that had always sat beside his workstation. He had lost his job. He stood outside the cottage for nearly 20 minutes before gathering the courage to go inside. He stood outside the cottage for nearly 20 minutes before gathering the courage to go inside. How could he tell his pregnant wife that he had no income? When he finally opened the door, Eliana looked up from the rocking chair she was repairing. One glance at his face told her everything. She didn't ask questions. She simply stood, walked over, and wrapped her arms around him. For the first time since childhood, Thomas cried. I am sorry, he whispered. I have failed you. Enielo gently lifted his chin. You lost a job? You didn't lose your character. Those are two different things. The following months were the hardest they had ever known. Thomas accepted any work he could find, repairing fences, delivering coal, cleaning barns, working in neighboring towns. Some days he returned home exhausted, earning barely enough to buy supper. Eliana quietly took on extra sewing jobs after school. She mended dresses by candlelight while Thomas slept in the chair beside her. Neither wanted the other to carry the burden alone. Without ever discussing it, they had become a thing. Then came another test. Their daughter Emily was born early. She weighed barely enough to fill Thomas' hands. The doctor spoke carefully. There are no guarantees. She all needs time. Those words echoed through the tiny hospital room. For weeks, every cry from the baby felt like hope. Every silence felt like fear. Thomas prayed in ways she never had before. Not for wealth, not for success, only for one more day with his little girl. Thankfully, Emily grew stronger. Slowly, painfully slowly but stronger. When they finally carried her home, Thomas paused at the front door. He looked at Enialo and whispered, We made it. She smiled. We've only just begun. Years passed, the cottage filled with laughter, then with toys, then with muddy boots. Another child arrived, then another. Their home became noisy, busy, and wonderfully chaotic. But marriage was no fairy tale. There were evenings when they were too tired to speak. Arguments over money, disagreements about parenting. Days when stress made them impatient with one another. One rainy evening, after a particularly heated argument about unpaid bills, Thomas stormed out of the house. He walked for nearly an hour through the empty village streets. The rain soaked his clothes. His anger slowly gave way to guilt. When he returned home, the lights were still on. Eliana was sitting at the kitchen table. 2 cups of tea waited between them. She looked up and quietly said, I was beginning to worry. Thomas stared at the untouched cup. You aren't angry? Oh, I am. She smiled faintly. But I had solved the problem than lose my husband. Thomas sat down. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then he reached across the table. I am sorry. She realized she squeezed his hand. So am I. Years later, people would ask them how they avoided divorce. They always answered honestly. We didn't avoid arguments. We learned how to come back to the same table. And perhaps that was the second great secret of a marriage that would one day last 80 years. The years passed more quickly than either of them expected. The children grew up. The tiny cottage became too small. So they added another bedroom with money Thomas had saved for many years. Emily became a nurse. Their eldest son became a carpenter, just like his grandfather. Another daughter became a music teacher. Then came grandchildren. The house that was once echoed with cries of babies was suddenly filled with little footsteps once again. Thomas became the grandfather who always had sweets hidden in his pocket. Eleanor became the grandmother who somehow knew exactly what every child wanted to eat before they even asked. Christmas became wonderfully noisy. Birthdays became larger every year. Even through it all, one thing never changed. Every morning, before the sun rose, Thomas quietly slipped out of bed and made 2 cups of tea. Even after retirement, even after arthritis stiffened his hands, even after walking became painful, he still carried 1 cup upstairs and gently whispered, "Good morning, my love." One morning, their eldest daughter asked him, "Granddad, after all these years, why do you still make grandma tea every day?" Thomas smiled. "Because if I stop doing the little things, I might forget how much the big thing matters." When Thomas and Eleanor celebrated their 80th wedding anniversary, the entire village came together. There were photographs stretching across every decade of their lives. One showed 2 newlyweds standing outside the church. Another captured Thomas teaching his children to ride bicycles. There were pictures of family holidays, graduations, wedding and birthdays. Every photograph told the same story. Not a perfect life, but a faithful one. Local newspaper heard about the celebration and sent a young journalist to interview the couple. She expected romance. She expected stories of love at first. Instead, she found something much deeper. She asked the question everyone wanted answered. What is the secret of staying married for 80 years? Thomas looked at Eleanor before answering. She nodded gently, inviting him to speak. He smiled. There isn't one secret. There are hundreds. The problem is that people ignore the small ones while searching for the one big answer. The journalist leaned forward and opened her notebook. Thomas held up one finger. The first secret: never stop being curious about the person you married. She looked puzzled. What do you mean? He chuckled. I married a 19-year-old woman. She didn't stay 19. She became a teacher, then a mother, then a grandmother, then a great-grandmother. She kept growing. If I treated her as though she never changed, I would have stopped truly knowing her. Eleanor smiled. And I kept getting to know him too. The shy young man I married became a father, a provider, a grieving son, a joyful grandfather, a patient old man. Marriage lasts when 2 people keep meeting each other again. The journalist paused before writing. She had never thought about marriage that way. Then she asked, "What about arguments?" Thomas laughed so hard that everyone in the room joined him. We had plenty. Eleanor smiled knowingly. We just learned one important rule. Never let pride become more important than peace. She explained that sometimes she apologized first. Sometimes Eleanor did. Not because one of them was always wrong, but because someone had to care more about healing than about winning. Thomas added, in every argument, ask yourself one question. Do I want to be right? or do I want us to be alright? Those few words filled the room with silence. The journalist asked another question. Did you ever fall out of love? Eliana looked out of the window for a long moment. Then she answered with complete honesty. There were seasons when love felt effortless. There were seasons when it felt like hard work. But love isn't just a feeling, it's also a decision. Feelings come and go. Commitment keeps opening the door until the feelings find their way home again. Thomas quietly reached for her hand, and every time they came back, they felt stronger than before. The interview lasted nearly 3 hours. As the journalist prepared to leave, she noticed an old wooden box sitting on the bookshelf. Inside were hundreds of written notes. She asked what they were. Eliana smiled. Whenever one of us did something thoughtful, the other wrote it down. The journalist picked one small note. It read, "Thank you for waiting up until midnight after my late shift, even though you had school in the morning." Another said, "You laughed at my terrible jokes when nobody else did." Another simply read, "You held my hand at the hospital today. You didn't say much. You didn't need to." For decades, they had been quietly collecting reasons to be grateful for each other. Not mistakes, not disappointment, just gratitude. Thomas looked at the young journalist and said, "People will remember every heart. They should also remember every kindness." A few months after the anniversary, Thomas became ill. His body grew weaker. Walking became difficult. Eventually, he spent most of his days sitting beside the living room window, overlooking the garden they had planted together decades earlier. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, he looked at Eliana and smiled. "Do you remember the dance?" She laughed softly. "You stepped on my foot. I remember everything." And you still said yes. "No!" She squeezed his hand. "I said yes because you promised we had faced life together. You kept that promise." Thomas closed his eyes for a moment. "So did you." A week later, Thomas passed away peacefully in sleep. When the family entered the room the next morning, they found Eliana sitting beside him, holding his hands. She wasn't crying, not yet. She gently stroked his wedding ring and whispered, "You choose me every day. Thank you." The funeral brought together generations of people whose lives had been touched by the couple. Friends spoke about Thomas' kindness. Former students spoke about Eliana's patience. Their children realized something remarkable. Their parents had never left them a fortune. No grand inheritance, no mansion, no expensive possessions. What they left behind was something far more valuable, an example. They had shown their family what commitment looked like, what forgiveness looked like, what quiet, faithful love looked like over a lifetime. 2 weeks later, Eliana quietly passed away in her sleep. The family placed her wedding ring beside Thomas before they were buried together. On the shared headstone, the children chose only a few simple words. They choose each other every day. Years later, visitors to the village cemetery often paused beside that stone. Some had known the couple, many had not. But everyone who heard their story left with the same thought. The strongest marriages are not built on perfect compatibility. They are built on ordinary people making extraordinary choices again and again. Choosing patience when tempers rise, choosing forgiveness after disappointment, choosing gratitude instead of resentment, choosing conversation instead of silence, choosing to notice the little things, choosing to come back to the same table after their disagreements, and above all, choosing each other every single day. Perhaps that is the real secret of a marriage that lasts 80 years. Not finding the perfect person, but becoming the kind of person who keeps loving faithfully, even when life is imperfect. Because in the end, love is not measured by the size of the wedding, or the price of a ring, or the photographs on the wall. It is measured by the quiet promises that are kept long after everyone else has stopped watching. And maybe tonight, if someone you love is sitting in the next room, take a moment to tell them you are grateful. Because one day the memories you create in ordinary moments may become the greatest treasures of your life. Thank you for listening. And remember, the greatest love stories are rarely the loudest. They are the ones that whisper a day after day, I am still here, and I still choose you.